You guys, welcome back to the last session of the night and the moment we've all been waiting for. Now, Pauleanna Reed is a senior contributor at Forbes Women and the founder of The Writer's Block, a full-service celebrity ghostwriting agency. A purpose-driven entrepreneur with a storied career. When she doesn't have a pen in her hand, you can find Pauleanna mentoring millennial women and delivering university guest lectures on entrepreneurship, fulfilling a passion to light up dull classroom curriculums with real-world experiences. She is also a mental health advocate and a public speaker who is widely known for using her clever wit and candor to help young adults see beyond the limits of their circumstances. Pauleanna is currently enrolled in the Women's Leadership Program at the Yale School of Management. She is an active member of a chess club, has written 2 books, and loves to volunteer. You guys, please welcome my sis, Pauleanna Reed.
Hey, how are you? I'm so happy to be here. Today, we are going to chop it up with the one and only Necole Kane, and I'm so excited to have her because Necole's my girl, and this is going to be like a girl chat that we have on a regular basis. So I'm really excited to bring her to the stage. Necole, where are you at? Necole? Yes.
First I was like, what am I supposed to be doing?
I was like, y'all have me out here looking foolish. Okay, so we're here. How are you?
I'm good. First of all, shout out to all the speakers that presented today. It was so much useful information. I don't know if we've gone out, but so much useful information. A lot of times I just felt like every single session was on point. And for $20, you can't beat that. And they didn't pay me to say this.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. BYOB always does it up. And so I want to officially welcome you to this space. Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence. You know, you and I had, we started our friendship last year. And from the moment I met you, you have shown me that you have a big heart, you have a beautiful spirit. And I know that the audience is going to be so blessed to hear the lessons that you have today. You know, the theme for this conference is built for this. And I think, through your story, one thing that we can learn is that, the only way that you and I know how to climb out of any hole is gradually, one foot in front of the other. And so for the viewers who may not be familiar, I mean, I don't know who doesn't know you, but for the viewers who may not be familiar with your background or your career trajectory, Necole was a pop culture and entertainment blogger for 7 successful years before launching XONecole. And in less than 2 years after launching her new company, she caught the attention of Hollywood film producer Will Packer and was acquired in 2017. When I know you've been doing quite a few speaking engagements, whenever you hear, your bio and how far you've come, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
This year during the pandemic, because prior to the pandemic, I feel like I was on a hamster wheel. You're always trying to reach the next milestone. And so I don't think I ever sat and thought about how much I've done over a 12-year period, because I started my first site, NecoleBitchy.com, in 2008. And, it's 2020. So to even be in a game this long, it gives me chills to think about it, because if you had talked to me back then, I definitely didn't dream this big. So when I hear my bio, I just think of God had bigger dreams for me than I had for myself. That's what I think of.
Absolutely. And I think, you and I talk about it all the time, like people want promotion without enduring the process, right? And so Today, we're going to dig deeper into the process and some of the challenges that you've had to endure. But first, I would love to know, for those who are watching who are being introduced to your brand for the first time today, or even if you're a longtime admirer, in your own words, like, can you describe your brand today and what it represents?
XONecole. I run XONecole, which is a women's lifestyle and empowerment platform. It was definitely fueled by my desire at the time when I was running a celebrity gossip site. The culture was very celebrity obsessed. So any site that was geared towards Black women was filled with celebrity news and entertainment, and they'd sprinkle beauty or those type of things in. And I was like, we really need to shift the culture a little bit. We need to show that Black women deserve more. We need to, and so, sorry, when I see myself big like this, it just definitely caught me off guard. So XONecole is an unapologetic, safe space for Black women to elevate in all areas of their lives, including career, relationships. We talk about mental wellness, feminine health, and all those things that we used to whisper to our friends, but now we have this platform that are giving us the voice to, tell our stories in an authentic way.
So you had built your blog, Necole Bitchie, into a $1 million brand, in a lot of ways. It was tied to your identity, but at some point you chose to walk away from the fame, from the fortune. Mm-hmm. And what I want to know is, at what point did you realize that the brand that you had built no longer aligned with your existing with your values?
Well, going back to when I launched Necole Bitchie first, because I wanted everyone to know what space I was in. At the time, I was dead broke. I had no job. The IRS had cleaned out my bank account for some tax situation that had happened. I was fresh off of losing my parents. They had died just 2 years apart, just a few years prior. And I was living in a guest room in my aunt's house. And so when I say I was like rock bottom, that I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And I had no industry contacts. I was just a small town girl with a computer and a love for celebrity and entertainment news at the time. And so I got online and I started this blog just as a way to pass the time away. But one thing that I did do that I would recommend to anyone that's starting any business is that I stayed consistent. And so every day I dedicated myself to posting at least 2 or 3 pieces on the website. Every single day I got up. I had to have a morning one, a noon one, and a late in the afternoon one. And that consistency started getting me noticed. And another trick I did was I would comment on other popular blogs, and it'd be you make it funny or intriguing. So people would be like, well, who is this? And so they click on my name and then they go to my website. And if they came back, they would see, oh, she's updating frequently. And so that's how you build a brand, through consistency. You cannot build a brand without consistency. And so the blog took off fairly quickly, but I was 28 years old at the time, or going on 28. When I crossed over into my 30s, I went through what you would say is like a rite of passage, where you start living with a little bit more intention and purpose. Right. And by the time I got to around 32, I was just like, this isn't really what I want aligned with my name. And I realized that when I would walk in rooms, I was the elephant in the room, and not in a good way. Like, I would walk in a room and the whole room would shift. And that bothered me. And then I had a grandmother who had passed, and she was an entrepreneur. And I was just like, would she be proud of this brand that I built? And I wasn't sure she would have. And that sat on my spirit a lot. And I knew, like, 4 years in, even though I stuck with it for 7, I knew 4 years in that it was time to build a brand that was more aligned with the person I was becoming. So to anyone that's listening, one thing I would say, if anyone, like if someone asks you, what do you do? And you hesitate versus scream it to the mountaintops. If you hesitate to say what you do, or you have to think about it for a second, it's probably not what you should be doing with your life, because you should be very proud of whether it's the brand you built or the position you in or the position that you're moving into. And so that's when I knew that it wasn't aligned with where I was going.
I'm so glad that you said that. I think our society, our generation is so attached to titles. Mm-hmm. And I really want to encourage the audience to really, really dig deep to understand who you are beyond them. You know what I mean? And so you had an awakening moment when you decided to move. Can you tell us how relocating, what that experience was like, how you grounded yourself, and how that prepared you for what was to come?
It's funny because I moved in so many different ways. I was living in LA at the time. I had been back and forth between LA and New York, and I moved to Arizona because sometimes you have to isolate to elevate. And I knew I had to go out there to isolate myself from everyone in the industry. When you're in the entertainment industry, you surround yourself with entertainment industry friends, And so I went through this process, which was one of the scariest moments of my life, because like you said, I wasn't sure once you stripped me of my title, the money I made,
right?
Friendships, because they go real quick. You don't have a check coming in anymore.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure I was going to know who I was. And it was a very scary place for me. Like, who are you going to be when you strip yourself of all of these things that have validated you for so long?
Yeah.
So I went to Arizona, like you said, and I gave myself 6 months. We put a plan in place, and I chose the date, which was July 2nd, 2015. It was going to happen during Essence Weekend, because I said I wasn't going to blog another Essence Weekend. I was like, you might get me BET Awards weekend, which was always the weekend before, but I'm not blogging both this year. And I will say the way I exited my website was through a letter that really talked about my intention for myself and how I was moving into another chapter of my life. But pressing send on that was so freeing. It was almost like your resignation letter. Like,
right.
It's coming, and you're like, I can't wait until that last day. It was so freeing to press publish. And I pressed publish, and I went on a vacation for a week, and I was like, I'll figure it out when I come back.
I love that you trusted yourself to figure it out. You know what I mean? And I think that, one thing that I have learned from, watching and witnessing your growth is that, a blessing too soon is not a blessing at all. Right. I think a lot of people, they value comfort over growth, and you had to go through these things. This was the prerequisite to, the blessing that was about to come. And I want you to tell the audience a little bit about, the moment you were contacted by someone who opened a conversation that opened a world of possibility for you.
I left my website in 2015, NecoleVitchie.com, and I launched XONecole maybe 6 weeks later. So I closed my website July 2015, and I launched XONecole August 2015. The only reason why I'm doing the timeline is because I gave very little time in between, and it's because I was scared to lose my audience. I thought that if I jumped in and launched something else, that I'd keep everybody. And that's just not
right. Right.
Because not everybody is ready to go where you're
absolutely.
I mean? Not everyone
people who are obsessed with celebrity culture.
Exactly.
They don't want to be empowered.
They're like, and they took me as a joke. I mean, you're a celebrity gossip blogger that you've been doing this for 7 years, and suddenly you wanna be empowering. They were like, how long is this gonna last? And so for me, I knew I was going to have to work hard to not only have a brand that was positive, but I would have to be positive. I would have to consistently show up every day and be an improved and evolved version of myself.
Regardless of the metrics, right? Exactly. Regardless of how many views, you have to stay committed.
Have to stay committed to your integrity. No matter if, like you said, the views may not come in the beginning. does that mean that you go back to more celebrity news stories? No. You
Right.
you keep at it. And so I started the site, and we were growing. We just weren't making any money. So I ran out of resources very quickly. By the time Will Packer came around 2 years later, I was in 6-figure debt. So I went from making all this money to I started a new brand and had no real strategy of how we were going to make money. I didn't have a sales team. I had did a content plan, but I didn't do a sales and marketing and revenue strategy.
Right.
I want to say this because that's very important. So when Will Packer came along, I had completely ran out of resources, and I was considering closing my site down, and that was 2 years in. But yeah.
So when he came along, so talk about that. So is that something that like, I know you said you had no strategy, but were you aware that this was a possibility? Were you taken by complete surprise? How did he find you? Did someone plant a seed? What's that origin story?
No, I don't think anyone had planted. I think the seed that had been planted was I did a video in 2016, a YouTube vlog.
Yeah.
Talking about my how I had wanted to launch this brand. I had these big dreams, but I was failing miserably. And no one admits to failing in the middle of the failure. They normally admit it after they've gotten out of the failure. But I did this in the middle of feeling like I was about to lose every dollar and have to go back and sleep on my aunt's couch. And it was one of the most humiliating situations I've ever gone through, because it got picked up by so many media outlets. And it was just like, Necole bitchy from boss to broke, and sad news for Necole. I mean, the headlines were just heartbreaking, because my worst fear had always been to fail in front of people. I could fail all day behind the scenes. I've failed so many times. But I didn't want to fail in front of people. And so those headlines was me failing in front of people. But those headlines caught the attention of people like Will Packer, who contacted me a few months later, like, hey, I would love to sit down and chat with you, and see how we could work together.
I think that's so important, because oftentimes when people are posting on social media, for some people, we both know women who are very transparent. And I think I have so much respect for someone who has every reason to throw in the towel, but doesn't, and tells that story. But then you have other people who you're only seeing their highlight reel. You're only seeing the glitz and the glam. And it's like, it's hard to connect with those people, especially during a time like now. So I definitely commend you for being vulnerable. And for those people, for everyone who's watching, transparency, that's how you're really going to build an audience. That's how you're going to build a loyal fan base, right? And I mean, people fan out over you. I've seen the comments, and I think it's because you are so open, and you hold the pen to your own story. You don't allow people to tell it for you. So when we were talking, you also mentioned, going to New York with 3 suitcases, and you went there during the time that you were negotiating with Will. Can you tell us a little bit about the significance of that trip? And I would love for you to also talk about, during the negotiations with Will, like, what were some of the things that were important to you during these negotiations, and what are some of the pros and cons of a merger or and acquisitions?
Well, first of all, when Will came to me, he was interested in launching a brand new site geared towards women. And I was looking at him with the side eye, like, so you basically want me to come work with you for a brand that is just like mine? No, like, that doesn't make sense, but I got about 5 people I can refer to you. But he kept coming back month after month, like, I really think we could create something great together.
Right.
And so once I talked to him, I definitely got sold into the idea to launch this new site. Don't ask me how. But I think at some point he was just like, why would we launch a new site when she has this following and she's done such a great job with her site? So when the negotiations started, I wasn't exactly sure, like, if I was going to go through with it. I read every acquisition story I could find on the internet when it came to websites like mine, and they all ended in failure. They all ended sites shutting down after like a year's time.
Right.
And I was just like, oh, hell no. Because I could fail on my own. You know,
right.
There's no, I was like, I can't let this man come and buy my site and then it shuts down within a year. That's not a success story. And so that scared me. And so, like I was telling you on text, there was a point where I said, you know, I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to fight for my brand, whether this acquisition goes through or not, because I was still living in Arizona. And so I sold everything in my place. I sold my car. I had a Range Rover at the time that had been on my dream board forever. And I dropped it off at a CarMax for a check. And so I had this check and I had 3 suitcases that I packed. All the things that I sold were from my Necole Bitchy days. So all these designer clothes, and I actually donated them. And I showed up in New York and I got a sublet apartment with about 3 other roommates. That was the most humbling experience in my life, because I stepped outside every day in New York and was like, what would people say if they knew Necole Bitchy was living in a $600 sublet with like 3 roommates with bed bugs and just her, you know, 3 suitcases? This is a fall from grace, you know? But that lasted about 4 months, and I trusted God was gonna bring me through it. And he did. And the negotiations went through September 2017, and my life changed forever.
How does one know whether or not an opportunity is truly beneficial versus it being a distraction? What are some things to measure that we can share with our audience?
I had the opportunity to sell Necole Bitchy in 2012, I think it was 2013, about 4 years in. I think I got an offer for like $3 or $4 million. And at the time it was the company that owned Vibe, or it was Vibe trying to, I never said this before, Vibe tried to buy my website. I didn't go through with that because it didn't feel right, you know? And thank God I didn't, because 2 months later, they got bought by Spin Media. So I would have been wrapped up. Basically, what they were doing was they were just buying my brand for the audience, for the metrics. You don't want to be in business with someone that's only buying your brand because of a number you're bringing to the table. You want them to care about your audience. You want them to want to invest in you and your future. And I think a lot of these, especially these commercial mainstream media companies that come along and buy, like the Essence, they were bought by Time at one point before they were bought back by someone. You're just buying it for the metrics and the number, but you don't care about the audience. You care nothing about Black women.
That was evident.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how you ask questions. Do you know my audience? Do you know their pain points? Do you know what makes them sad and happy, and where they shop at, and how they spend their weekends? Do you even want to know? Because if you don't, then maybe we shouldn't be in business. And so I think for me, I knew Will was very passionate about Black women. He makes films for Black women. He had daughters, you know, young daughters that were in high school at the time. And he needed a place for them to go and see people who look like them or who they could look up to. And so I knew that was like a perfect fit. But what concerned me was that he wasn't in the digital space. You know what I mean? Like, he was a production company, but like, I'm a digital, would you know what to do with my brand if you bought it? And so I dealt with just reservations over that.
I think that another thing that audience members watching may have concerns about is how much creative control you would still have, you know, in the partnership. Can you talk to us how you balance, you know, sharing innovative ideas with the Will Packard Media team, and how much creative control you still have and how important that was to you?
Yeah, well, my acquisition was unique because I have full creative control. It's almost like I run the brand that I started,
right?
But I get a salary and benefits like I would if I wasn't an entrepreneur. But I still feel like an entrepreneur because every decision we make within our brand is one that is made by me. So I say all that to say, I got lucky. This is the first time I will use lucky when it comes to me.
Yeah.
That's ain't luck, but this situation was so perfect for me. In the beginning, they did try to bring in new management, like, new managing editors. And we tried to do that and it just did not work out. I'm very proud that the women that were working with me when I had nothing and I was paying them out of my pocket are still on the team right now. And they're all managers. They're the managing editor. They're the social media manager. And they don't have prior experience in media, but we're running it some type of way. I don't even have prior experience in the publishing company. I mean, in the publishing, I've never worked for a magazine ever in my life. I've never worked for a media company outside of radio. So we're like guessing our way through this thing. But and that's to be honest, but what's keeping our brand alive is that we know the audience.
Right. Absolutely. During this, this sensitive climate.
The sun is going down, so my light is super bright. I'm like, it's getting dark out here. Now, this is the realest moment of this.
I know, I hear you. Girl, I had to have a whole setup in front of me. I have lights in. Okay, we're good. During this economic downfall, a lot of people are questioning themselves, questioning God, questioning the cards that they have been dealt. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs who are questioning whether or not they are built for this season?
Honestly, mindset. That's what's going to get every entrepreneur, everyone through this season. And as soon as I saw the pandemic starting to happen, I invested in my mindset immediately. I was like, you have to get a mental toolbox. What's in your mental toolbox? My Himalayan salt lamp, my aromatherapy, my podcast, my books, because if you're not mentally fit during this time, you can definitely talk yourself out of opportunities. You can definitely, your business can go to ashes. And so for me, it was the mindset of even gratitude, you know what I mean? Because gratitude brings you more abundance. And so as soon as the pandemic happened, I know a lot of people were like, I can't wait until this is over. I was like, I'm going to live my life as if this is never going to be over.
Right, because we don't know.
Normal. Right, this is your new normal. So how can you effectively run your business with the circumstances that are put in front of you? And I started there. So I think that's my advice to people who are trying to navigate this season and they're trying to wait it out. It's no waiting it out.
Right. You got to act now.
Until 2022, you just never know. And so you have to figure out, how can I best run my business? How can I best grow during this season? Because this is what we're presented with, and this is our new normal.
We're seeing on social media, we're seeing, all these productivity wars. We're seeing, CEOs that are looked at as these superheroes. Yeah. I want to know, in a culture that's so obsessed with being self-made, how much value do you place on your team, and who are your key team members? Because as a CEO myself, I know that I wouldn't have been able to get through this season without delegation and leaning on my leaders in my company. So what does that look like for you?
Oh, your team is crucial to your success. And what's so funny is if you get the wrong person on your team, it's almost like a cancer. It's a cancer, and that cancer spreads. So if you don't remove them, once you identify this is the wrong person, take down your whole business. So for me, the team is definitely important. That's what I'm very proud that, like I said, my core team has been with me even before I had the money, before the acquisition, and they're still riding with me. And that says a lot about their loyalty, but it also says a lot about just what happens when you all have a common goal. And I think the common goal that me and my team have is that we have just a passion for Black women and their elevation, and them having a safe space where they can be unapologetically full, their full selves. But without my team, I wouldn't be XONecole. When I was Necole Bitchy, I wrote the blogs for like 3 or 4 years. And then I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. I need to find writers so that I can be out and be the face. Now I have a team in place that for editorial, social, etc., which helps me continue to expand our brand offerings and diversify our portfolio. So instead of me spending time running the website, I'm constantly idealizing events that we can have. I'm constantly doing productions, video productions. I'm running our members community, right? Just brought you into, and I'm doing our podcast. So I've diversified the portfolio, which has brought us tripled our revenue, because now we have more than just our website that's keeping us alive.
How can founders who are watching, how can they cultivate compassionate leadership in order to maximize the trust and minimize the stress with their team? Because, you know what I mean? Like, it's a sensitive time. And so I know you're checking yourself as a leader, and you have to be emotionally intelligent to be aware how your team is feeling day to day.
This was very difficult for me because I've never taken, and I need to invest in leadership courses. And then as someone that has always struggled with depression, just because of the loss of parents and childhood trauma, I know I can get pulled down into a deep-seated depression really quick. Now, add the responsibility of keeping your team paid and food on the table. It's a very heavy load to carry as an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurship is lonely. So for me, it's constantly making sure I'm in a healthy mindset, because if I'm not well, it trickles down the line to everybody on my team. And so it's me constantly trying to figure out what makes you at your best every day. For me, I have to work out every day before I start work and before I plug into social media. It's just something about releasing endorphins. It's something about listening to motivating podcasts on the while I'm doing my cardio that gets me mentally prepared to be the best leader I can be to such a young team. I have a young team. Most of them are under 30. You know what I mean? So
they're the best, because they're innovators. They keep you fresh. They keep you aware of what's going on. I love it.
For sure.
So we have some questions in the chat that I quickly want to go through. So someone has said, what habits did you have to let go and pick up that you believe contributed to your success?
Habits. I had to let go. I had, especially after my acquisition, I had imposter syndrome for the first 2. I just let go of the imposter syndrome this year, honestly, after I put down everything I accomplished. But for the 2 years after I got acquired, every day I woke up like, oh my God, I'm gonna get found out. They're gonna see that I don't know what the hell I'm doing. They just asked me for an editorial calendar. I've never done an editorial calendar. They want to see my budget for all of next year. Like, what?
Right.
I was just like, I'm gonna get found out and they're gonna remove me. But I figured it out, and it's one of those things where you fake your way through it until, like I said, someone comes along and buys your company, and then you have to run your business in the right way. I had to implement infrastructure in my business. So yeah, that was a huge obstacle to me, just knowing that I was worthy of this acquisition. I was worthy of the salary that I negotiated. I was worthy of the 3% raise that I negotiated to get every single year. So I wouldn't have to ask for it every year.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Love it.
You know what I mean? So yeah, the imposter syndrome and having confidence in myself was the biggest one.
So someone else wants to know, what is your highest performing piece of content and how do you come up with content ideas?
My highest category on the website is sex. And, you know, it's very important to me to implement a sex section on our website because I noticed, like, when it came to Black women, it was just something that wasn't touched on a lot. It was during the time before Insecure and the Mary Janes and those things where you would look at movies and we just would never be in a romantic scene or a sex scene. There was like a huge gap between Jason's lyric and then, like I said, being Mary Jane and Insecure, where we weren't looked at in that way. And that's a part of who we are. We have relationships and we have sex in those relationships. You know, that's how we have kids and reproduce. And so for me, it was about allowing Black women to reclaim their sexuality and be unapologetic in that way. So that's one of our main, our biggest categories, relationships and sex on the website.
Someone else wants to know, what platforms would you recommend using to start a blog in the early days? And can you also speak to the important things to note before being able to monetize?
I would say WordPress. Definitely. I think when I started, people were on Blogger. I don't even know what Blogger. Actually, that was me. That was you. The guy that launched Blogger actually is the same guy that launched Medium, I believe.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So he's figured that business strategy all the way out. But WordPress, I just love all the different themes and all the different plugins that there's a plugin for everything.
Right.
So I would say, yeah, WordPress. Can you also speak the important things to note before being able to monetize? I would say consistency first. Some people just jump into it just to make money. The first thing they want to do is ad on the website. Like, forget the ad. just be dedicated to, I don't care if it's Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays you're posting, or if it's every Tuesday. It has to be consistent though, because you can't come in and blog and then not give us a new post until like 3 months later. That's not the way you grow an audience. You have to be consistent. I believe that's what influencers are doing on Instagram. They are dedicating themselves to whether it's one post a day or 2 posts. But that consistency is important, and build your audience first, and the advertisers will come. The ads, all of that will come, but you need the audience first.
And I have a question that I'm sure people are dying to know. How can they get featured on your site? How can they pitch their submissions? How do you, like, what's the process for looking for writers? Or if I'm a subject matter expert, how can I get featured?
Well, we have 2 boxes: editor at XONecole.com, submissions at XONecole.com. Most of the time, if you send a pitch to editor you would send your pitches to editor at XONecole.com. If you have already written your post and you want it on the blog, that's when you would send it to submissions at XONecole.com. I would say before pitching anything, go to our website, because we've written about everything under the moon. Search it and make sure if it's been featured on the site before, that you have a different angle. What is something new you're bringing to the table? Because I keep seeing pitches of like how I overcame being broke or whatever. You know, it's just very generic, and I'm like, what is the hook? You know, and so that's definitely one of them. You're like good at just knowing how to. If we do not accept your pitch again.
Yeah.
Again, you know, sometimes we'll help you out and we'll say, would you be able to angle it this way? Would that work for you? And that would work for the site. You know, if you have a pitch or you have a unique personal story, but you're not a writer, we have a writer on staff that does as told to. So what she does, if you have a compelling enough story, she will interview you and then she will write it up in your words. And it'll just say at the top, as told to Charmin Michelle, which is her name. So there's various ways you could be featured on a site. If it's a business, what is the angle? Everyone wants their business featured, but just find a unique angle.
Okay. And last question. We have 3 minutes left. Somebody asked, what podcasts are you listening to? Because you mentioned you work out, you listen to podcasts in the morning. So like, give us 2.
It used to be called Hashtags and Stilettos, but now it's called the Sakita Method. I like that a lot. It's run by a woman that owns a PR agency, and I like Side Hustle Pro. Those
Beautiful.
2 are definitely for people who are trying to evolve in their businesses.
Awesome.
Oh, and The First Million by Arlen Hamilton.
Yes. And How I Built This. I love that.
How I Built This. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So I think the host is going to join us in 2 minutes. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And we appreciate you. I'm sure the audience took away so many good gems. So thank you.